it is. Hello, humans. I can't tell if we're live or not because I'm an ADHDer and I have 500 windows open. So let me just find Dr. Sue's face again. There she is. Yay. And now in typical 500 windows open, I don't have my intro prepared, but we are here live. Real life is happening. I'm going to find it. Just stay with me, folks. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, right here. I found it. Okay. And I also have two screens because I'm super fancy. So I'm going to put it over here. The plan was to have it in front of me, but technology is technology. It's Friday and I heard we're in Mercury retrograde. So we're blaming that. Okay. We're starting for real. Dr. Sarah here. Hello. I'm so happy to be interviewing Dr. Sue Milstein. Did I say it right? Okay, I practiced a bunch, but my brain doesn't hold information like that, especially verbally. Dr. Sue is a fellow speaker at the Art and Science of Health Promotion Conference, which is going down at the end of the month here in Colorado at Colorado Springs at the Broadmoor. And I'm really excited to talk to Dr. Sue today because she talks about something that you wouldn't think about in workplaces. So, I have it right here, I promise. Here we are. Okay. Dr. Sue is the founder of Milstein Health Consulting and a master certified health education specialist with more than 2 decades of experience teaching and presenting on health education, sexuality, and well-being. She is also the co-author of the textbook Human Sexuality, Making Informed Decisions, and has presented nationally and internationally on a wide range of health topics. At the conference, Dr. Sue will be leading a session titled Brains, Burnout, and the Bedroom, the overlooked link between sexual well-being and workplace wellness. It's a topic we don't talk about very often in workplace wellness, but when you think about it, stress, burnout, brain chemistry, and relationships are all connected. So today, we're going to explore why sexual well-being is an important part of whole person health, how workplace stress shows up in our personal lives, and what organizations can do if they truly want support helping humans holistically. Dr. Sue, welcome. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Okay, so for those who may not be so familiar with your work, can you share a little bit about your background and how you became interested in kind of this intersection of sexuality, health, education, and maybe a little bit about how this got into the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought I was going to be a high school health teacher. Like that was my goal. So I got a bachelor's degree in health education. I got a master's degree in health education. And then like sex was one of those things that everyone really wanted to talk about, but no one seemed to be willing to give it a proper space. And so when it came time to get my PhD, I decided may as well do that. So I got a PhD in human sexuality education, and then I've been working essentially in that space ever since. Sorry, my phone should have been silenced. Let me just silence that real quick. So I kind of have 15 hats, like I feel like we all do these days. So by day I'm a professor and I teach human sexuality classes and other health education classes. And then probably about 5 years ago, I started feeling really frustrated that I wasn't giving enough back to the community outside of my classroom. And so I started doing Hey Dr. Sue, where folks can submit an anonymous sex question to me online through my website. And then once a week I answer it. And then that wasn't enough on top of my consulting firm. So I started a podcast with a friend of mine. It's called Unzipping Taboos, Candid Conversations About Sex. And one of the things that we're doing in all those spaces is really looking at how this is so often not discussed, but so often prevalent in all of our work, whether it's school or work or whatever. It's prevalent in all these spaces. So for me to get it into the workplace stuff, I have presented at Art and Science before. If you have never been to this conference, you really should go. It's an amazing conference. And I've been doing something on men's health, which is also an oft ignored topic. And so when I saw this one come out, I'm like, the call for proposals was focusing on neuroscience and the brain. And I'm like, that is a perfect fit for looking at stress and relationships. And I took a chance. I wasn't sure because it isn't always talked about, so I wasn't sure they'd jump on it, but they accepted it, and it's all come to be. But if really we want to look at whole person wellness, it has to be whole person wellness, and we can't afford to ignore the sexuality piece.
Yeah, I agree. And it's brave of you, to put that out there. And I think there's probably, what I can imagine, a stigma or it's probably challenging to start that discussion, to be able to go into organizations to be like, we're going to talk about sex, and this is the workplace, because it very much seems like, like we're going to have to get HR involved.
Yeah.
So do you have a way that you kind of approach the conversation when you're trying to educate or get in with a new organization, or kind of like promote what you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's really a change of phrasing. So if I'm trying to get people's attention, I'll say I'm talking about sex. If I don't want a door slammed in my face, I tell them I'm talking about sexual health, because wherever your brain goes with that, it sounds like it's a little more acceptable than just talking about sex. So I take it from the sexual health perspective, and the getting in the door has been a problem in a lot of places I've tried to do education. There's so much stigma around that, which tells me how much they need this information. Because if you won't even take a meeting, or you won't do the education, I know you're not meeting the needs of your clients or your customers, depending on what kind of organization it is.
Yeah. Well, I love how you take a holistic perspective of the human, right? Because we are humans, and sexual health is part of that. And I think when you talk about things, and I know your session touches on this a little, like brain chemicals, like I know serotonin is a great one that you get from sexual health, sexual wellness, cortisol, oxytocin, dopamine. So I work with a lot of neurodiverse humans, and these things, dopamine specifically tends to be one of those neurotransmitters that tends to be not as efficient in our brains the same way as it is for other humans. So if you want to touch it, my fidget tool went away, so I'm going to grab another one. So can you explain a little bit about how workplace stress affects these systems, these neurotransmitters, and why that matters for both work and then personal life?
Yeah. So really it's about, if we're looking at it, it's just a big cycle. And so sometimes it's hard to know where to start, because if you have issues going on in your home relationship, you are carrying that stress into the workplace with you. If you don't have issues in your relationship, which is fantastic, and you have stress at work, you're bringing that home with you. So it becomes a circle. And so it becomes really about that stress response. And what we find for a lot of folks is if they are in constant stress at work, whether it's because of deadlines or workplace relationships, like you and your boss just butt heads a lot, or there's fear your company's going to let you go, like that kind of stress, and your brain doing the things that it does, right? Like you were talking about releasing the cortisol, and that doesn't stop because we go home. It can't. Our brains don't do that. Our brains don't understand, like, oh, this stress is now temporarily relieved, and I just have to go back to work tomorrow and it'll still be there. Your body kind of stays in that. And then depending on what happens when you get home, it may be I don't want to talk about what happened at work, which may feel better in the moment, but isn't helping your brain kind of deactivate from the stress. But then also talking about it can make you feel like you're back in that stress cycle. And so there's no really good answer. Unfortunately, there's no really good answer except to limit the stress or give people the tools they need so that it's not impacting the relationship. Because when we're stressed at work, our sexual satisfaction goes down at home. It's just, and we see that in study after study after study. And because we're bringing it in with us, and it's just always in that space. It's harder for us to relax. It's harder for us to enjoy, even if we are still sexually active. Part of our brain is always there, like it's always in that work drama that's going on. So it just becomes the cycle, because then we're also probably not sleeping well because of the increased hormones in our brains. And then if we're not rested, it's just, yeah, it's just this vicious cycle.
It is a cycle. For those of you listening who have listened to more than one of these, again, it's this whole concept of a holistic human,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not just one thing. It's never just one thing. And like that saying, wherever you go, there you are. Like you said, you don't just leave work and you're like, stress is there and now I'm home and everything is chill.
Yeah.
And especially if someone's in that burnout cycle. So for an individual that might be experiencing burnout in that cycle, what advice, first, like, what would be the signs? Because I know we talk about burnout a lot and we just assume that everyone knows what it is. So right. Maybe what would be the signs that someone is kind of in burnout, and maybe how that's showing up in their intimacy and work, and because, you know, we're humans, we take that with us. Maybe relationships, whether that's work relationship, significant other relationship.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways of looking at burnout. And I mean, that could be like a whole nother session all on its own. The thing that a lot of people don't cue into burnout that also can impact the bedroom are the physical stuff. So the sleep deprivation, turning to substances to try to deal with the stress levels, having problems sleeping. I already talked about that. Anxiety, depression, cardiovascular disease, all of that can be symptomatic of burnout. You may not cue into that as burnout, right? So if you're having cardiovascular problems or you're having anxiety problems, you're chalking it up to what's happening, but not chalking it up to that being your body's response. So there's like that physical component, but from an emotional side, burnout's really about being checked out emotionally. You are just so tapped that you cannot really connect to the people around you, to the work that you're doing. So maybe you used to be that person who like gave 100% at work, and you were in on everything and you cared about every aspect. And now it's like, I'm seeing that project come to fruition and I'm half checked out. And then we carry that checked out feeling at home. And especially for those who go home and then are caregivers, whether it's to their parents or their kids or to their loved one. If you have to leave a stressful situation and then go home and be a caregiver, you're depleted. You are absolutely depleted. It is hard to connect with our partner when we can't even connect with ourselves. And so it just becomes this thing that's impacting everything. And it's hard to say, well, if the stress just went away, I'd be better at home and I'd be better at work, because it's not that simple. You still carry that thing that happened with you.
So what advice would you have for someone of how do you take care of yourself? How do you start that process of, okay, I'm in burnout. I'm realizing my emotional state. For most people, what we find is like, they just don't give a shit anymore. They're like, we don't care about anything. Like, we used to care about all this stuff. And it's just like, you're done, right? Yeah. You're done. So what would be your magic wand advice, or where would you start? Because there's no such thing as a magic wand. But
if there was, I would have bottled that and like made everybody happy by now. It starts with naming it, I think, a lot of times, because it's so easy for us to be like, I'm stressed at work. There's a difference between stress at work and burned out. There's a difference between my body is now yelling at me that I can't do this anymore and I am emotionally checked out, and just like I have heightened stress about this project or this deadline. And so I think the first thing is naming it. And I don't want to say self-care, because I think that's become a joke the way we use it. It's like, oh, go do self-care. And then it's, but how? And like, how do I actually make that meaningful? I try to tell people to find one thing they can do a day that's for them in a space that makes them feel even a little bit better. And that may be turning off your phone for 5 minutes. That may be going for a walk by yourself, which sounds funny because when I'm talking about connecting with humans, you're kind of like, well, why am I doing that on my own? And it gives me the space to kind of just come back to me. What it's going to be is going to be different for everyone. I mean, ideally, you'd go find like something you can do or you can succeed, but who has that kind of time or energy at this point? So whatever it is that will help you reconnect to yourself, even if it's just for 5 minutes a day, and then maybe push it to 10 as you keep going. But that naming it is really important. It's so easy for people to just be like, oh, you're just stressed at work. And there's a difference of, no, I'm completely tapped and I'm burnt out and I don't know what to do. So I think naming it's a great first step. Doesn't solve it, everybody. Sorry. Like, you can't just name the thing.
There's no magic wand, humans.
There's no magic
like
wand.
Whenever a client is done with a program with me, we always do like an exit interview. And I was like, what was the one thing that changed your life?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a trick question because, it's never one thing. Yeah. But I want to name the things that you said because I 100% agree. By naming your emotion, your experience, whatever, the burnout, telling your brain that that's okay, like science says, that can reduce your stress level by 66%. Just by giving your brain, you're like, this is what I'm experiencing. That alone can be enough of a, so that then you can take the little 1% better of doing the 5-minute action.
Yeah.
Right. And those people who have been following me know that in 2018, I created a program called Move Out Work Challenge, which is 5 to 7 minutes of movement and mental health that you can do at your place at work. So it is and not everyone, many humans have this experience of all or nothing thinking, right? Mm-hmm. They think like, I have to change everything. Like all of a sudden, I'm going to wake up on Monday. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to do all the things. And that's way too overwhelming for our brain, especially if we're in burnout. Mm-hmm. And especially if no one's ever taught us any of the skills of, okay, yeah, we're going to do self-care or we're going to go for a 5-minute walk. What does it even look like? And legit, just go for a walk.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah. And I think mindfulness is a huge one. And all that is being present.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this moment right here, right now, what's going on?
Yeah. And that's actually really important in the bedroom as well, because if I am not present with my partner and I am 15 other places other than here, I mean, we may have sex and get through it and like, even just phrasing it that way, like get through it. We may have sex, it may happen, but it may not feel like we ever connected with each other because my brain is already somewhere else and I can't be present in that moment. So that's something that again, it's, if we can do it in one place and maybe carry it through. But yeah, the thing with the self-care is that we've got generations of people who need to excel at everything. So it's like, okay, I go for a walk and what are my metrics? Like how am I graded on my 5-minute walk? Giving yourself that break.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that for my neurodiverse humans who are listening, like you got 15 things going on in your brain while you're engaging in intercourse, like, and I know that tends to be what happens. So being present, being mindful, and depending on the neurodivergent, I know for neurodivergence, there could be a lot going on, right? Because there's like sensory issues and touch, and depending how your brain works and it could be way too overstimulating or there's just so many of these things, plus all the chaos that's going on in your head. And I think coming back to mindfulness and where you're putting your attention, right? Even as ADHDers, and we think about a million things at the same time, you still have a choice and you can still train your brain like we train a muscle. Like I didn't get a muscle by doing one bicep curl. It's over and over again. And if you think of it like a practice, and you get better by practicing.
Yeah.
So I want to switch back, kind of going into the workplace or talking about this into the workplace. For those employers who feel a little uncomfortable with this topic, what's your advice for how organizations can start to acknowledge that sexual well-being is part of a whole person health perspective that feels appropriate, respectful, workplace friendly?
Yeah. Start small and stay in your lane. Like if I could give people 2 things, I don't expect you to do like a workshop on sexual dysfunction if you've never done that before and you're uncomfortable, because A, it's not going to be well received, and B, you're going to be uncomfortable and they're going to know that. It could be something as simple. So if we're looking at sexual health, this is a huge concept. And if you come to my session, I will explain that a little bit more. You can start by bringing up sex in places you never thought of it. when you do onboarding and you're talking about what's covered in preventive care, put in there something about STI testing. That's it. One line about what's assuming it's covered in your preventive care. But if you include that one little thing, that changes the dynamic of the conversations that you're having without being like, hey, we're talking about sex here. Look, everybody. If there's a way to highlight I'm big about adding sexual health awareness stuff to things we may already be doing. So if you're already celebrating months, like, is it October? I'm trying to remember when National Breast Cancer Month is, but there are months where you can maybe highlight something without it being overtly like we're talking about sex, but we're including sex in this conversation. So my thing is just doing it small in a way that feels comfortable, but also staying in your lane. Like don't take on something that you have no idea what to do. So either figure out if you can add something small or get someone else. Maybe you can partner with another organization. Maybe you can partner with me. But there may be folks, especially if you're partnering with outside groups for through health insurance, there may be groups that can do something a little bit more sex related that takes the burden off you, but opens the door to saying like, hey, we understand this might be there. When we talk about stress at work, it's very often talking about burnout and very rarely talking about relationships at home. So talking about relationships, whether it's work relationships, but even just saying work relationships and at home relationships, just adding that to the title. So yeah, start small and stay in your lane, and don't try to do too much, because it's not going to go well if you do too much.
Yeah, that cup gets filled pretty quickly.
Yeah.
For someone who's going to come to your session at the Art and Science of Health Promotion, who's curious about this topic, but maybe a little hesitant, what would you say to kind of encourage them to say, come on in, it's going to be a good one?
Yeah, well, it's set now. That's the big joke. If you really care about employees, if you really care about whole person anyone, because I know some folks aren't in employee health and employee wellness, if you really care about all of people, then this is a session where you can open your mind and just learn a little bit more. And maybe you'll take something out and maybe you won't. But if you haven't thought about it before, it's a great way of thinking about it. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who are like, I don't know how to do this, but I acknowledge that we're humans in a bigger world. So maybe we can all figure it out together. I'm really big about not talking the entire time. Like, my session's an hour and 15 minutes. No one wants to hear me talk for an hour and 15 minutes. So it's going to be a lot of working with each other and talking to each other. And maybe you'll just get something from the person in the seat next to you who's in the same exact, like, do I really want to do this? And how do I do it? You're not the only one who's in that boat. So come meet other people.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I heard you talk about like community and relatedness. And when we connect to other humans, like relatedness is one of the basic psychological needs. That's what I did my PhD on, motivation, self-determination theory. But when you're connected with others and you feel awkward, and it sounds like in your session, you're going to encourage discussion and like talk about where you're at. And we assume that these people are coming from workplaces, right? Because your session is titled In the Workplace. So it's going to feel awkward for anyone who comes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. I mean, let's just assume that it's going to be everyone's going to be feeling the same way that you feel. And I think reducing the stigma and having the conversations is one of the ways that we do that. Like, that's why whenever I have a conversation with any human, I bring up ADHD or neurodivergence, or I'm getting interviewed for something else. And they're like, we're not going to talk about ADHD. And I was like, oh yeah, we will. It's like, it's going to come out. It just will, because that's part of my identity now, and like my life and what I do and what I'm passionate about. So I think by joining into the session, you're going to learn a lot more than you think you're going to learn. You're going to have conversations that, who knows, you might end up changing your organization. You might end up having new friends. You might end up I'm sure you're going to come away with a lot of actionable steps that I have a feeling it's going to be the tiny little shifts.
Yes.
That make huge differences. And as you said, I love how you said in your onboarding, like, just mention STIs, just like, and also how leadership discusses these things, how you talk about women's health and sexual health and all that thing. I think it's going back to that idea of like this all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
You know,
it doesn't have to be that. It's small changes. because that's the only way we're going to change the stigma. And maybe you won't do anything today, like maybe you won't do anything from this live, or maybe you won't do anything after the conference, but maybe in 3 months you'll be like, I think I'm ready to give them. Maybe I'll just do a little thing in the newsletter that's a little bit around sexuality. It's the idea that if we're not talking about it, people know they can't talk about it. And if you do bring it up, especially if one of your employees is struggling at home, they may feel like, okay, maybe I can talk about this. Maybe I can talk about it through my, the employee benefits, where we send people out to talk about things that are challenging to them. If I don't think of that as something that's relationship related, but now you're saying, when we're doing advertisement about, hey, like make sure you're using your EAP stuff, make sure you're talking, it's about stress. If you just add the word like sexual relationship in there, as long as the people are qualified to have that conversation, that's going to make people feel like they have a way to help themselves, which is going to make better employees, which is going to make happier humans outside of the workplace. I know we're supposed to focus on employees. I'm focusing on happy humans outside the workplace too.
You're talking my language. I love that. Well, it's such a pleasure to talk to you today. Can you tell the folks that are listening when your session is going down, if they're going to join us? And before you do, for those listening, you can still get a ticket, okay? Wherever you're watching this, in the little blurb that I posted, there's a link there to click to get your ticket so you can join us in real life in Colorado Springs in 1, 2, 3 weeks from now. Okay, wow. Now tell us when your session is.
So it is March 25th and it is at 3:25.
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful. So if you're there, go see Dr. Sue. My session is called Thriving with Neurodiversity in the Workplace, and it's going down on Thursday, the 26th at 2 p.m. And I'd love to see you. And this is going to be an amazing conference, and I'm so excited. And thank you so much, Sue, for being here. I look forward to seeing you in real life in just a few weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Have a good day, everyone. Happy Friday.